Good morning, everyone, and welcome to HCD's office hours for this week. My name is Anthony Zepeda, and I will be moderating today's office hours. We're going to give it another minute or two to let our attendees log in. In the meantime, go ahead and introduce yourself with your name and the region you represent in the chat, and we will get started in about a minute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to HCD's office hours for ESG. We are holding for just another minute or so for more of our colleagues to join us. So as always, in the meantime, we invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name and the region you represent, and we will begin in about 30 seconds. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Again, welcome to this week's office hours for ESG. My name is Anthony Zepeda, and I am today's moderator. If you're just joining us, please go to the chat and introduce yourself with your name and the region you represent. And as a reminder, this office hours session is being recorded for public record. And a second reminder that just popped into my mind is HCD policy does not allow AI assistance in our public meetings. So if you have an AI assistant signed up with you right now, please disable that. Otherwise, we are required to remove you from the meeting. And we don't want to do that. We want you here. We want to share this information with you. Next slide, please. Okay, some of the ground rules, how to ask a question. All questions must be submitted in the question box. It's on the ribbon down below. If you look down in your Zoom, there's a little ribbon that says Q&A. You can enter your question there. Please include your name and the region you represent when you submit a question. And the team will read the questions out loud at the end of the presentation, and we will provide answers throughout the presentation in the Q&A box or out loud at the end if time is permitting. And we ask you not to put your questions in the chat. I know it's tempting, but they oftentimes get lost in the thread as the chat just keeps going. And so please, if you have a question for the ESG team or HCD, please put that in the Q&A box. Alongside our presenters today, we also have other HCD staff, including our ESG representatives, our specialists, and HCD management, who can help answer questions during the Q&A session. Next slide, please. Please note that both the slides and the recording will be sent to all participants within approximately 2 weeks of today's session. These recordings are also available approximately 2 weeks after they are presented on our ESG webpage and our HCD ESG YouTube page. Next slide, please. So just going to some general updates right now. This is for the 2024 NOFA. Staff are still reviewing funding applications, and some of you are a little farther along in the process than others, and we have already talked about a direct award, not direct award, but we've already talked about the award, and we anticipate announcing those publicly by July 2025. There are contracts exhibits for the next standard agreement that if you are awarded 2024 ESG funds, we will have a standard agreement process, or another way of saying the contract. And the contract exhibits are online on the ESG webpage. You can download those now. We would recommend that you start taking a look at those early. There is updated language compared to prior standard agreements. And we would encourage your program staff and also your legal team to take a look at the exhibits to make sure that you're aware of all the new language and the ESG requirements. Next slide, please. So that was the 2024 awarding, which is going on right now. Switching over to the 2023 grant. That has already been awarded. You've already had a standard agreement. And for many of you, you've already got started on the billing and the RFF process. For those of you who haven't, here are some performance milestone reminders coming up on us really quickly. The expenditure deadline for 2023 contracts is August 17th, 2025, just around the corner, just a few months away. And so if you need help there, let us know in terms of spending, and that ties right into the next bullet, which is there's an expenditure date in your standard agreement, and where 80% of the contract must be expended by June 17th, 2025. That is about a month away, or a little less than a month. So if you're having trouble spending, or if you need some help, let us know. If not, just keep on doing the great work you're doing. If you've already spent your funds for the 2023 grant, reach out to your grant representative for a certificate of completion and further instruction, and they will be happy to help you out. Next slide, please. Continuing, the next two slides are going to continue with the 2023 grant, the current grant that we are operating under. Continued on the performance milestone reminders, there is contract language that specifies grantees are required to submit at least one request for funds, or RFF, per quarter. Of course, we recommend monthly, but per quarter, you're required to submit one RFF. And if the RFF deadline is missed, a written action plan must be submitted. Not sure if I really touched on that very well, but also within the performance milestones within your contract in the exhibits, there is language that states that the first RFF must be submitted 120 days after the date of your contract execution. So about, approximately 4 months after your contract is executed, you are required to have submitted an RFF by then. We have a few folks who have not yet been able to submit, and just a heads up that we will be sending out letters later this week or early next week notifying you that you have missed your performance milestone and that a written action plan must be submitted, and to demonstrate to HCD that you have a plan for spending those funds in the amount of time that we have. If you have any questions on that, or if you receive a letter, please feel free to reach out to your representative or the NOFA inbox if we can assist you, because we're not here to catch you, or it's not all gotcha or anything like that. We want to help you spend the money. We want to help deploy these funds in your community and continue with our mission and to address the homeless problem, both at the state level and at the local level, and we are here to help. Next slide, please. So, as mentioned, the next two slides, the request for funding requirements for your first RFF. If you haven't sent them, you should pay attention here. But even if you have, this is a good reminder for those of you who submit the RFFs and have to come back to this. We work on a lot of grants. We realize that. So we just want to get these reminders in, so that for your first RFF, full backup documentation is required for all DER line items. And for rapid rehousing and HP funding, homelessness prevention, you must have approved policies and procedures in place. And we ask that you redact all personally identifying information, or PII. You don't have to redact everything, as we do have a secure server that meets all the privacy requirements by HUD in the state of California. However, we do ask that you use HMIS numbers rather than client names where possible, and to redact social security numbers, driver's license, things like that. But in general, you don't have to redact an entire page, which might have the address of the rental or something along those lines. Next slide, please. So for the first RFF, for every line item on your detailed expense report, you have to submit supporting documentation. For The second RFF and all subsequent RFFs, supporting documentation is only required to be submitted for 2 line items per component. The grantee is able to select the line items that they want to document, just highlight those on the DIR, send in your documentation, and we will review those 2 line items. If it's rapid rehousing in HP, include full client files, as that will be required, and also redact all personally identifying information. A little helpful hint, I say this every week, a little helpful hint, try and make your first RFF small. If you're submitting an RFF, if possible, for your agency, try and submit something that is small, like staff time, that doesn't require 200, 400 pages of backup documentation to be scanned and reviewed. Reach out to your rep. If you have questions on that, we're happy to help. We've got a lot of our grantees through this process, and we'd be happy to help you as well. Next slide, please. So wrapping it up here, really harping on the RFFs, complete client files, have your supporting documentation. We have the HUD HCD client file checklist that we're happy to send out to you directly. They're also on the ESG webpage. It's a great reference for identifying what exactly we are looking for and what HUD will be looking for in their monitoring as well. Just reach out to the NOFA inbox or your representative if you need assistance with that. Next slide, please. And just wrapping up here, just a few more examples of what a complete client file, rental and lease agreements that are signed and dated, copies of the rental payments and invoices that you are asking us to reimburse you for, the VAWA addendum, a requirement for both in California and federal grants, lead-based paint notice, and your rent reasonableness certification. This is just a sampling of what you'll find, but these are the key items that we look for when we're reviewing your RFFs. Next slide, please. And so here are your team representatives, Sam, Giovanni, and myself. Just reach out to us. We'd be happy to assist you with your RFFs, your 2023 contract, or your 2024 application. If you can't reach one of us during normal business hours, you can always reach out to the ESG NOFA inbox listed at the email address below. That is monitored Monday through Friday during normal business hours. Next slide, please. Before we get started, do we have any questions on the 2023 contracts or the 2024 awards? Not seeing any. Hearing a lot of crickets, so it looks like we're going to be okay to move forward. And next slide, please. And so today's Office Hours Spotlight Series is on emergency shelter. You may recall that we are going through a component by component series in Office Hours. We've covered rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, and now we have an emergency shelter. Next time we will do street outreach. And we've been starting these all with these great videos that we have on the ESG webpage. So I'm going to hand it back to Gio to play the introductory video.
In this video, you'll learn about the Emergency Shelter component within the Emergency Solutions Grants Program, or ESG. But first, let's take a brief look at ESG itself. ESG is a federal grant program offered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, receives ESG funds directly from HUD and administers the state's annual ESG allocation. ESG assistance is flexible and can be used to support a variety of activities under 5 project types, or components: street outreach, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, and emergency shelter, which is what we'll talk about here. The emergency shelter component provides much-needed funding so states, local governments, and territories can reduce the prevalence of homelessness, engage with individuals and families living on the street, and place them as soon as possible in quality temporary shelters that offer essential services. No leases or occupancy agreements required. People who would be considered eligible for emergency shelter assistance are those who fit the HUD definition of homeless. Broadly speaking, they are in one of two groups. The first are those individuals and families who don't have a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. They may be staying in a public or private space not designed for human habitation, or in another shelter. They also could be exiting an institution where they've been for 90 days or less after living in a shelter or place not meant for human habitation. The second are individuals and families who have no other residence, lack the resources or support networks to obtain permanent housing, and are fleeing dangerous conditions such as domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. So now that we know who is eligible for funding, let's see what activities are eligible. In other words, how can the emergency shelter component best help those in need? ESG funds can be used for many essential services beyond case management, from outpatient health, mental health services, and substance abuse treatment to childcare, education, employment assistance, legal services, life skills training, and transportation. Additionally, ESG funds can be put toward the costs to operate and maintain an emergency shelter on a day-to-day basis. These can include repairs and maintenance, rent, security, fuel, insurance, utilities, or furnishings for the shelter. Of course, all emergency shelter projects funded through HCD must have proper policies and procedures. These rules detail how each funded project can be a part of the local coordinated entry system, so those in need can connect quickly to permanent housing and other resources. Because coordinated entry is critical to moving people from sheltered homelessness to housing, projects should be part of the process to the maximum extent possible via their local continuum of care. More information is available from your coordinated entry leadership. All ESG-funded emergency shelter projects must also use their local HMIS to keep accurate records of all people served by a particular shelter. Please consult the ESG program's HMIS manual or reach out to your HMIS lead for details. In closing, we encourage you to read the Emergency Shelter Policy, which sets out how HCD expects state-funded emergency shelters to operate. You can also review the Emergency Shelter Client File Checklist, which details what HCD expects to find in every client file served by ESG funds. You can find both documents on the HCD website, and you can learn more about ESG components in our other videos.
In this video, you'll learn
Thank you, Gio. And while Gio gets back to the PowerPoint, as a reminder, all of these component videos, as well as the recordings of the office hours and previous office hours, can be found on the ESG webpage. I think we're on slide 14. There we go, perfect. So to recap, emergency shelter is intended to provide temporary shelter for the homeless in general or for specific populations of the homeless. ESG funding may be used to provide essential services for individuals and families who are in an emergency shelter or renovating buildings to be used for emergency shelter for homeless families and individuals, and for shelter operations. Where no appropriate emergency shelter is available for a homeless family or individual, eligible costs may also include a hotel motel voucher for that family or individual. Next slide, please. So what is the goal of this particular component, the emergency shelter component? The video wraps it up pretty good. It's to reduce the prevalence of homelessness and to engage with the individuals and families living on the street. And here's the kicker. This is the most important part, is to place them as soon as possible in a quality temporary shelter that offers essential services and no leases or occupancy requirements required. Next slide, please. Eligible participants can meet either both or one of the requirements of group 1 or group 2. The first group is they don't have a fixed regular or adequate nighttime residence. They are living in a publicly or privately operated shelter designated to provide temporary living arrangements, including congregate shelters, transitional housing, hotel motels paid for by charitable organizations or federal, state, or local governments. Or they're exiting an institution where they have resided for 90 days or fewer, and they resided in an emergency shelter or a place not meant for human habitation immediately before entering that institution. Next slide. Group two's very similar. They have no other residence. They need a shelter that night. They need a place to stay that night or that day. They lack the resources to support networks to obtain permanent housing, or they are fleeing dangerous conditions such as domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. As stated, participants can meet one or both of the group requirements. Next slide, please. In terms of eligible projects, emergency shelter can be used for essential services. And this really, once again, gets to the heart of this component. It is looking to provide essential services, a suite of services that are not one size fits all, that will quickly enable participants to get involved in programs that will lead to permanent housing, positive housing. And this can include case management, child care, mental health services, substance abuse treatment, education, employment assistance and job training, legal services, and life skill training. Now, this video that we watched and then this presentation, we're really at the 10,000 foot level. In the HUD policy and also HCD policy for emergency shelter, you can go into much more detail in terms of the specifics of each of these categories of what is offered. Transportation is also offered, and a few others that we didn't include on this slide. Next slide, please. So emergency shelter, the essential services. This other side of it is shelter operations, actually the day-to-day operations of an emergency shelter. And some of these items that are eligible are minor repairs and maintenance, rent, security, insurance, fuel, utilities, food, furnishings. We just want to say that I want to highlight this point as it comes up a lot, and we talked about it a lot last year in office hours, is that the state ESG funds cannot be used for renovation, conversion, or major rehabilitation activities, as outlined in the CFR 576 Emergency Solutions Grant. However, minor or routine repairs to an ESG funded emergency shelter that do not fall under renovation, major rehabilitation, or conversion, you can use those for state ESG funds. It's minor repairs, very minor repairs. The program HCD ESG, we recommend not undergoing any type of construction projects using ESG funds or any other federal funds that are subject to the Buy America, Build America requirements, BABA, Buy America, Build America requirements. If you can find another source of funding for those type of projects, we would highly recommend that, as the BABA requirements are very strict and they are down to the screws that you use for everything. It's Buy America, Build America. We can give you more information on that if you like, but we recommend minor renovations, but not anything major. Next slide, please. Sorry about that. I tend to get lost on the BABA. It's very detailed. So emergency shelter best practices is overall, when you're putting this program together, especially in terms of the essential services, you're looking for a client orientation based towards the client, helping clients with their preferences and their needs. A people first orientation, you're prioritizing, much like number one, the client's needs by focusing on the individual. It's not a one size fits only, but one size fits all. A strength-based orientation. What we mean by that is you're targeting your program to the strengths instead of corrective action. In general, that is going to lead to a more successful program and moving people more quickly into positive permanent housing, which ties in with that last point, housing oriented, a housing first orientation. The goal is to transition participants as quickly as possible to permanent housing. Emergency shelter is not, we like to say it's not a warehousing funding source. We don't just want to, we're just, getting them in there and just letting them handle themselves. No, it's a whole suite of services to help them be engaged in a network of services and activities that can lead to a permanent housing solution quickly. Next slide, please. So what are the requirements of the program? Much like the other programs here at HCD, you must have approved written policies and procedures. The local coordinated entry system, participate in that. That is really the backbone of this program. And then you also must use your local Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. All ESG funded emergency shelter projects must use their local HMIS to keep accurate records of all people served by a particular shelter. Next slide, please. We'll go into a little more detail. So the written policies and procedures, they encompass all of the emergency shelter component requirements. This list on the slide, they represent the highlights from the HCD Emergency Shelter Policy Manual. However, there is much more detail in the manual, and additional details in terms of implementing the program and what is required are listed there. So some of the things that we highlighted, they must detail how the projects will participate in the local coordinated entry system. Working with your local continuum of care, or COC, your emergency shelter project must participate in the coordinated entry system. Ties into how they can get other services, the suite of services we talked to earlier, and also the permanent housing quickly. And we touch on those with define the suite of services provided by the project, define the housing problem solving approaches that your organization is going to take, your process for entering participant data in the local HMIS, and then how you are establishing and documenting participant eligibility. Good client files, we'll always go back to that. Good client files means establishing and documenting everything that you do in terms of participant eligibility. The policies and procedures must be submitted to approval to HCD, but you are not required to have approved policies and procedures before beginning to spend ESG emergency shelter funds. But we do need to review those and have those approved as you get rolling on the ground. Next slide, please. So the coordinated entry, as we were discussing earlier, all of your projects are required to participate in this process with your local continuum of care, as this provides the critical path from homelessness to housing, and also going back to those essential services, really hitting on those as they are the backbone of the program. Next slide, please. We do have the client file checklist on our webpage, which really details the emergency shelter requirements. Some of the highlights include the program and HMIS entry date and household information. We touch on that in the other slide that demonstrates that you are entering, your program is entering them and documenting participants throughout the process in the HMIS. We'll look at the verification of homeless status, whether that was a self-certification or that was done by staff at check-in. Your services and linkage provided. What are you offering to these clients? What does your program offer in terms of essential services, linkage? How are you tied into the local COC? We're going to need to review your payments. Any payments for shelter expenses or staff time, we'll be looking at those. And then termination of assistance is applicable. If a client comes in and they are positively housed very quickly, you'd have your termination of assistance form all completed. Next slide, please. So some of the key performance measures that we are looking at when we evaluate these after the contract has been completed is we're going to look at the reduction in the average or median length of stay in emergency shelters, emergency shelter exits to positive housing destinations or permanent housing destinations. We're going to look at the percentage of people who return to homelessness from permanent housing within 6 to 9 or 12 months. And we're going to make sure that the program aligns with the local COC's goals to end homelessness in their region. Next slide, please. So one note, beginning with the 2024 NOFA, which was released and we talked about earlier, HCD will discontinue funding emergency shelter projects with minimum or maximum lengths of stay. So shelters that have the night-by-night shelters, as they're often called, with minimum or maximum lengths of stay, we won't be funding those. They're the night-by-night shelters, for those of you who are unaware, are typically high-volume shelters. A large portion of the clients only spend one night at the shelter, and they must exit the next day. And it's a very as-needed or irregular type of demand in terms of when looking for someone to stay for the evening. Next slide, please. We will continue to fund emergency shelter projects that require or strongly encourage a continuous stay while the client resolves their experience of homelessness. And we will continue to fund day shelters and seasonal shelters, which include cooling and warming centers. As mentioned, we're really taking an eye on the whole picture here. We want to look at the suite of services, what is being offered, how is your organization proactively leading the client through the process, or guiding them would probably be a better term, through the process to permanent housing and a supportive network of connected links and services. You can visit our webpage for more information on our shelter policy at the link below. Next slide, please. And now that was the overview, what it is, what it's intended to do, who is eligible, what projects are eligible, what is required in terms of client management, case files, and written policies, procedures. And now in practice, just to summarize, emergency shelter is meant to get people into permanent housing as quickly as possible. We follow the Housing First principles. They're integrated in the HCD documents that guide the emergency shelter. And we're working on helping participants find housing and, as mentioned, the supportive services. That can be access to a variety of suite of services in case management, health, education, job training, and so on. The last little bullet there is just the same thing we like to say all the time: document, document, document. Keep good records, and it should be an easy review of your RFFs and annual monitoring. If you have any questions on that documentation, please let us know. We can help you out. We have client file checklists and the other policy documents that are very clear and specific in terms of what is expected and what you will be monitored on. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, here are a few of the resources on our webpage. We have the emergency shelter policy, client file checklist for emergency shelter. Just a note, we need to update that. It has a CV on it still from the ESG CV days, but it still applies. It's applicable to the ESG annual, which we were talking about. And there's the ESG subrecipient program manual, which encompasses all of the ESG components, but also goes into specific detail for the emergency shelter, and also the HCD Housing First policy, which guides our emergency shelter program. Next slide, please. And there we are. We've wrapped up another component, and now we are ready to have a Q&A session with you. I will now turn it over to Amanda, who will lead this session.
We currently don't have any questions.
Okay.
They've been answered.
Got a bunch of emergency shelter pros on the call today. That's why.
Yeah.
All these people know what they're doing.
If anyone would like to unmute themselves, go ahead and write in the chat or in the Q&A box, or if you can raise your hand. Oh, it looks like we have one person that raised their hand. I have to figure out who that is, though.
Hello, hello.
That is Patricia Robertson.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I missed the beginning of the meeting when you were talking about these letters going out for the RFFs. I just want to see if I could get a little recap on that, as we are currently getting ready to submit our first RFF.
Sure. Do you want to say what agency you represent, or you want to be
Oh, sorry about
incognito?
that. Sorry about that. Eastern Sierra Community Housing, in Mammoth Lakes. We
Is
represent
this
Inyo
Jarrett?
County. Yes, it is.
Hi, Jarrett.
Hey,
Um,
how's it going, Anthony?
good. No problem. It's a good question. Yeah, we're getting ready to send those out, and it's if you're getting ready to submit, why don't you shoot me an email on that? Because we're sending out letters for those grantees who have not submitted an RFF yet for their 2023 funds. Those
Okay.
are required 120 days after the execution date of your contract. But in the case of Eastern Sierra, I know we have been working on that together, and also your approving your policies and procedures. So why don't you shoot me an email and remind me of this, and I will take care of that today, because we're
Okay.
actually writing the letters today and tomorrow and sending them out for signature on Friday. So,
Okay. I can do that. Thank you very much.
oh, no problem.
Have a good day, guys.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We did have one question pop up about the 2024 applications. How
Mhm.
long is the turnaround time once an application is submitted at this point? And I would say if you're receiving emails from one of us for documentation upload or revisions, it's dependent on how quickly you can turn those around to us. And then we have to review and either ask for more revisions, or we have to then have the second review done and then management review. So we're trying to turn them around as quickly as possible. We've taken about half, well, after tomorrow, half of them will have gone to our internal loan committee for approval. So we are getting them through quicker than ever this year. So we hope to have gotten them all approved and through the process by the end of June is the hope. And then hopefully into contract by July or August. So that is the hope. So if you are receiving emails from any of us, the quicker you can get back to us with documents, the quicker we can get them turned around.
Thank you, Amanda.
If
Just
anyone
checking.
else wants to raise your hand or ask a question in the Q&A box, feel free.
All right. Well, if anyone wants to jump in, please do so. As I'm chatting, I don't mind. You can talk over me or raise your hand. That's fine. But until then, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And these are the standard wrap-up slides that you hear me say all the time. Get our ESG resources with our webpage, which just has a ton of information, training, videos, policy documents, everything that an ESG nerd like me will love. So please visit our site if you can. There's a lot of information. And you can always reach out to us at the ESG NOFA inbox for general questions on the program or for assistance as needed. Next slide, please. You can follow us on social media. We just got an internal email not too long ago that we're jazzing up our social media sites. I'm really looking forward to it. And so hopefully you will too. You can visit us on the sites as they're listed. Next slide, please. And as always, we like to close with our little pitch to join us. The Department of Housing and Community Development is part of a larger organization, BCH. I can't remember all of the acronyms, but we're splitting. The department is splitting up, and there's going to be a housing side, and that really focuses on solving the homeless issue in California, and housing solutions up and down the state. We'll be part of that. And then there's another side that's going to be more focused on consumer agencies that all fall under the same umbrella as HCD. Having said that, we're probably going to need a lot of good people as we continue to focus on our mission here at HCD. So take a look on the CalHR side or the jobscalifornia.gov. Look at any openings. We'd love to have you join our team. And I think we're yeah, I think we're still looking here in ESG as well for a new representative. So if you want to join us, come join us. And with that, we're going to wrap up until the next office hours, which is going to be 2 weeks from today. And the topic will be street outreach. That, I believe, is going to wrap up our component series for the ESG program, the general overview. And from there, we will probably dive right into contract items as we move into the 2024 contract season. And with that, I think that's it. I see no other questions. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.